Welcome to room 44, where normal life ends and the truth peels away like old paint. This story isn't just creepy, it's real in all the wrong ways. So listen closely. Like, comment, and whatever you do, don't forget to subscribe. I never wanted to come back to Dryvale, a dead-end town tucked behind gray hills, the kind of place where people age fast and stories age faster. A place wrapped in secrets and stitched together by silence. I'd left when I was 17 with a duffel bag and a broken heart, swearing I'd never look back. But when my sister Claire went missing, just disappeared from her locked home like a ghost slipping between the floorboards, I didn't have a choice. They told me it was sudden. No signs of a break-in. Dinner still warm on the table. Front door still locked from the inside. The only strange thing? Every mirror in the house was smashed, and her eyes were missing from every single photograph. I stood on her porch that morning, key trembling in my hand, wondering what kind of force could erase a person like that. I should have left. I should have run. But Dryvale has a way of gripping you by the spine and pulling you back into its rotting heart. Inside the house, time felt broken. The TV flickered, though it wasn't plugged in. Her phone was on the table, screen cracked in a jagged spider web, like it had been crushed by an unseen hand. I picked it up and tried to scroll, but every photo, every single one, had been corrupted. Faces melted into static. Claire's smile stretched too wide, too pixelated. In one photo, her mouth wasn't even on her face. It was on the wall behind her, like it had detached and slid off while no one was watching. I called the police. They called it a mental break, a runaway situation. Case closed. But I knew Claire. She never ran. She stood her ground even when life hit her like a freight train. Something had taken her, I was sure of it, and I was going to find out what. That night I heard movement in the attic. It was too slow to be a rat, too heavy to be a bird. I climbed the creaking ladder, flashlight trembling in my hand, and found a room I'd never seen before. It was lined with mirrors, hundreds of them, but none of them showed my reflection. Instead, they showed memories. Not mine. Claire's. I saw her brushing her teeth, crying silently in the dark, tearing pages from a journal and burning them in a bowl. Then one mirror flickered and changed. It showed her looking at me, right into my eyes, mouthing something over and over again. 3 words. 3 terrifying words. They see us. And then the glass cracked. I stumbled back, nearly falling down the ladder. When I caught myself and looked up again, all the mirrors were blank. Just black, like portals to nowhere. The next morning I went into town. Dryvale hadn't changed. The diner still smelled like burnt coffee and old regrets. The librarian still wore that same mustard cardigan. But the people, they looked different. Eyes wide, smiles strained, like they were trying too hard to look normal. A man waved at me on the street and his hand twitched midair like it glitched. A woman in the grocery store dropped her basket when I walked past, whispering under her breath, "We thought it stopped. We hoped it stopped." I cornered Mrs. Eldridge, my old English teacher. She used to love Claire. "Why didn't anyone look for her?" I asked. Her lips trembled. Then she leaned in close and whispered, "Because we all remember what happened 10 years ago. We just don't talk about it anymore." "What happened?" I pressed. She looked around like the walls might be listening. Then she said, "They took 5 people in a week. Just like Claire. No sign, no goodbye, just gone. Only the mirrors noticed. Only they told the truth." I was about to ask more when she screamed. Right there in the middle of the frozen food aisle, her eyes rolled back and she shrieked like something had burst inside her brain. I rushed to her, but she was gone, just staring past me at nothing, whispering, "They see, they see, they see." They took her away in an ambulance. No one else seemed to care. It was like the town had built its own rules. You don't ask questions. You don't look in mirrors. You don't stay out past dark. And most of all, you don't leave Dryvale. I decided to visit the library, not to check out a book, but to dig through the archives. I found articles from the 1980s, that talked about a research facility on the edge of town, the Solara Project. Officially, it was a psychiatric experiment. Unofficially, it was a mirror lab. Scientists had come to study perception, the mind's reflection, cognitive projection through mirrored surfaces. The last article was dated March 12, 1987. Headline: Facility condemned after mass breakdown. Lead researchers missing. I drove there. The road was overgrown, trees bent unnaturally like they were leaning away from something they feared. The building stood in ruins, half collapsed, windows blown out like it had been trying to scream. Inside it smelled of metal, mildew, and something older, something watching. On the walls were dozens of unblinking eyes drawn in chalk, messages scrawled in blood-brown ink. They don't reflect anymore. They see us from the other side. Mirrors are not windows, they're doors. And then I found the tape. It was in an old camcorder, still functioning by some impossible stroke of luck. I hit play. It showed a group of scientists standing in front of a black mirror. One by one, they stepped in front of it. At first, their reflections copied them. Then they lagged behind. Then they started moving independently. One scientist screamed, "It's learning! It's not a reflection, it's an echo! An echo of us without conscience!" The screen went static. Then came a frame. A single frozen image. Claire. She was inside the mirror. Banging. Screaming. Her mouth open in a silent cry. Behind her, something with no face, only eyes. 100 eyes. Suddenly, the mirror in the lab lit up. And for a split second, I saw myself, but I wasn't alone. There was someone behind me in the reflection, but not in the room. I spun around. Nothing. The room was empty. Except now, my reflection didn't move. It just stood there, grinning. Are you still with us? If this story has you second-guessing your own reflection, click like, hit subscribe, and share this story. Now, back to the story. I ran from the facility and drove back to town, headlights slicing through fog so thick it looked alive. I reached Claire's house and ran to the attic, hoping to find answers. But when I climbed the ladder, the attic was gone. It was just a flat ceiling. No mirrors. No room. Just drywall and dust. I went downstairs to call someone. Anyone. But all the numbers in my phone were gone, replaced by a single contact. You. I clicked it. The phone rang. But it was coming from inside the mirror in the hallway. I approached. The phone in the reflection was vibrating. And then, my reflection raised its hand to answer, but I hadn't moved. Then it smiled. I didn't. It mouthed, "Let me in." I smashed the mirror. Blood dripped from my hand, and I swear I heard it whisper, too late. I left that house. I drove to the sheriff's office, desperate, bloodied, terrified. But when I told them everything, they didn't even blink. Sheriff Groves handed me a glass of water and said, "We all see them eventually. That's the price of staying here. You should have never come back." And then he opened his desk drawer. Inside were dozens of cracked Polaroids, each one of someone I used to know, all missing, all smiling wrong. He took one out. Claire. Only this time, her eyes were scratched out. But not with a pen, with fingernails. That night I tried to leave Dryvale. I drove straight, no stops, ignoring the speed limit. But after 3 hours of driving, the road led me right back into town. Same welcome sign, same gas station, same dead-eyed cashier who looked at me like he'd been expecting me. "Round trip?" he asked. "Gas up before they notice." "Who?" I asked. He didn't answer. I turned around to leave and caught my reflection in the gas station window. I blinked. It didn't. Then it walked away, through the reflection. I dropped the pump and drove again. This time into the woods. Deep. Off-road. Until my tires gave out. I walked for miles until I reached the cliff behind the old schoolyard. I used to come here with Claire. We'd sit on the edge and talk about escaping. And then I saw her, standing there, smiling, alive. I ran to her, crying, grabbing her shoulders. But her skin was cold. Too cold. And her eyes, completely black. She whispered, "It's not a place anymore. It's a mirror. The town is a mirror. And you're already inside." I stepped back and saw my reflection in her eyes. It wasn't me. It was the version I'd seen before. Smiling, dark, patient, and then she faded into mist. I never found Claire. Not really. Only pieces of her. Reflections of who she might have been. If the town hadn't swallowed her. Now I live in her house. I don't go near mirrors. I paint them black. But sometimes at night I hear them cracking. And I know I'm not alone. The town watches. It sees. And when I look too long at my own face, it blinks first. If this story shook you, if Dryvale left a crack in your thoughts, like, share, and most importantly, subscribe to Room 44, where stories aren't just heard, they're reflected back.